Thank you very much, Ken. Good afternoon to everybody. I would have loved to speak about measures to improve capacity in summer 2019. I'm afraid I'm going to talk about how to manage summer 2019 and how to make the best possible use of the available capacity that we have in the network, because this is the key topic. I will start first with what would be the en route delay forecast if none of the 7 measures that have been included in the Eurocontrol NM action plan would not be realized. And we are talking about more than 3 minutes per flight, about 3.5 minutes per flight. And this is not the final value, as the final value will be available during the second week of February. So this is a baseline forecast if nothing is done, does not include any effects of the proposed measures. We will have very high delay in France and in Germany. Does not include disruption effects. It includes weather effects, as we have seen them over the last 2 years. So if nothing is done, the delays will be extremely high, and some measures need to be taken in order to diminish this delay and to try to bring the performance as close as possible to what we have seen last year, basically. So, which are the 7 measures? Just to have a recall of those. First of all is the enhanced NM summer 2019 measures. I will go on each of them in detail. The preparation of the network operations plan for 2019-2024 with particular emphasis on the sector opening schemes and the rostering. And this is very important also for the first measure, because we had to understand precisely what will happen in each and every ACC, so that the measures are proportionate with what we are seeing as planned for summer 2019. Network CDM process for en route weather and for ATFM regulations, that will be extensively covered tomorrow by Chris Peregrine and by Gianni. Also, harmonization of FOA application and enhanced FOA procedures to try to get some support from our military partners in improving the airspace availability and in making a much better use of the civil military airspace. Addressing structural airspace bottlenecks with some initial steps for summer 2019, and there are quite good steps for summer 2019 taken by a number of ANSPs, but also starting to look a little bit into the longer term towards 2020-2021. And then there is a measure that relates more to the NSPs on working with the social partners to avoid strikes and provide improved notification to the airlines and to the network manager. Those measures have been agreed by the ad hoc NM board in October. They have been communicated by the Director General of Eurocontrol at high management levels, to the Council CEOs, to the European Commission, and they have been all very well accepted. And all the NSPs have promised to support and to show solidarity in how those measures will be developed and implemented for summer 2019. I will start with the first one. And before going a little bit into the measures, this is just a conceptual drawing showing what we have tried to do with those measures. Here we are depicting some parts, some sectors that we had to, for which we had to find solutions for summer 2019. And of course, the only way of doing this, don't look necessarily into the geographical areas, this is just a conceptual description, was to move flows, to shift flows to the east, to the west, to the north, or to the south. that was the only way through which those sectors was possible to make sure that we balance capacity and demand, or rather balancing demand and capacity. So the exercise was quite comprehensive, and why it was comprehensive? Because those could be some of the critical areas that we have to address, some of the critical sectors that we have to address. But what we used to know, and you know that I'm saying that quite often, what we used to call as being the old good core area is not exactly that anymore. Because this is the traffic complexity that we are getting now in the European airspace. And it's very, okay, it might sound very easy on how to move flights left and right in this darker red area. But you see that the dark orange part expands quite a lot in various parts of the airspace now. And while there is a high level of willingness from a large number of ANSPs to help, it is not easy for them either. So we had to find solutions, we had to find means to address on how those also very complex airspace would be addressed. And as you can see, there is quite a significant portion in Central and Southeast Europe that is quite complex, because the traffic grew quite significantly in that part, but also we have the complexities being created by the Crimean crisis, by the difficulties in having access to the Black Sea, etc. So we have a high concentration of traffic on those flows, and of course it is not very easy for a number of ANSPs located in that area to be able to accept additional traffic, because they already have quite a lot. So all those things had to be taken into consideration, and when this work has been initiated back in the autumn, first through lessons learned on the similar measures that applied in summer 2018, but on a much smaller scale, of course, all these topics had to be taken into consideration. So, what was the approach? First of all, those will be, all of them, network measures. There will be network route orientation measures enabling the strategic planning and not generating any bad surprises on the last moment. So they will mean strategic rerouting of the traffic through the airspace that has additional capacity, and protecting those areas where there is not sufficient capacity. They will be all published, and network manager RAD measures with the appropriate codes in that respect, and also measures that have implemented in the context of the NM for ACC initiative last year with the EC code from FABEC will be this year implemented with the network code. Network benefits came as a priority in this context, and all the rerouting measures that have been looked into are actually have as an aim to reduce the overall network delay, even if this might create some additional delay in the ACCs that are helping the network. To give you an order of magnitude, with the NM for ACCs last year, the amount of delay saved was around 5.2 million minutes of flight, 5.2 million minutes of delay, and the delay resulting from the unloaded ACC was only 150,000 minutes in 3 ACCs basically. So there was quite a good result eventually. The approach was cooperative between NM and almost all the ANSPs, and you will see on the next slide who actually is not impacted by those measures. And because almost every single ANSP in Europe is impacted by those measures due to the position, the location, of the problem areas, but also because we wanted to keep a balanced approach between capacity and flight efficiency. So in some of the measures, we were trying to avoid reroutings, very short reroutings, that would have meant a lot of extra flying time. Actually, some of the solutions proposed are indicating that the routes will be shorter through the airspace where they are proposed, and they will also be cheaper from a cost point of view. There was a mutual ANSP support, and this was very highly appreciated because it was a true solidarity between the ANSPs who have accepted those measures. And as I've said, we have tried to do a balanced, an optimum network balanced approach. We will provide quite soon, in a couple of weeks, also the flight efficiency effect of those measures. We are fine-tuning now the capacity effect of those measures, but as an order of magnitude, our estimation is that the delay savings could be 3 times higher than last year, because the situation is not as good, if I can put in quotation marks, as it was last year. Actually, we are getting to a worse situation in 2019. It is a good solution from a predictability point of view. There were lots of discussion this morning about predictability. At least everybody will know strategically where those flights will appear. And one of the main discussion points that we also had during a very big meeting that had this room full last week about those measures was the respect of those measures by all ANSPs and by the airspace users, in order to avoid that other sectors will be unduly unloaded with traffic, as we have seen a little bit in summer 2018. So we will insist a lot, and we will work with a number of ANSPs to produce some material to make sure that those measures will be respected both by the ANSPs and by the airspace users. We'll of course avoid unnecessary cumbersome coordination during the day. In the presentations that Monique and Gianni gave this morning, you saw a little bit how it was. Imagine that all those measures would have been scenarios, and we would have said, Ops room, could you please negotiate on a daily basis the whatever 200 restrictions that we had last year? It would have made life almost impossible, and it would have been completely chaotic. It would have led to chaos, to real chaos. And of course, what we believe is that by making the best use of the capacity wherever it is, that of course will avoid the cancellation of a significant number of flights. Now, which is the progress? I must say that all the NSPs have provided us with extremely good data of a high quality, and looking into the detailed opening schemes, the configurations, the traffic volumes or sector throughput, because the assessments had to be made realistically, because we know that there are cases, for instance, where the capacity of the traffic volumes, the actual used capacities are a little bit higher than what is declared. So we wanted to make a realistic assessment, because otherwise, of course, the situation might have looked much more dramatic than it is actually. There was a large number of clarification discussions and meetings with a vast number of ANSPs. First of all, with those directly involved, and then a lot of discussions, explanations, simulations made also for the ones who are the unloaded ACCs. Just to give you an order of magnitude, about 2,200 sectors in various configurations have been checked, and information has been provided to the NSPs to understand exactly which sectors will be unloaded, which sectors would be offloaded, etc. In addition to a number of measures that will be reconducted from last year from the NM for ACC's initiative, but that will be coded now like network RAD, we are talking about approximately 250 strategic organization and utilization measures agreed. Last week in this room, we have been through approximately 400 slides in detail to discuss and agree each and every measure. 95% of them have been agreed, with small clarifications on some others, and we still have one corner of the airspace that requires further discussions that we hope to conclude by mid-February. It's impacting almost all the ANSPs in Europe. The only ANSPs really who are not at all impacted by this traffic shift would be Ireland, Norway, Finland, Cyprus, and Malta. All the rest, in a way or another, they will be impacted by this traffic shift. As Joe explained just before lunch, we are going to put in place a very close monitoring and escalation process in the context of those measures also, because the measures have been agreed, the nature of the measures has been agreed at high level, and if we are seeing difficulties in getting to the implementation of some of those measures, of course, we will have to have an escalation process to make sure that the measures will be there and they will be implemented. As it was the case in 2018, a delay reattribution process will be put in place for the ANSPs accepting additional traffic, because otherwise it would have been very, very difficult to have those discussions with the ANSPs that are heavily unloaded. The delay will be reattributed to the ANSP being the root cause of the rerouting measure. There is already an NM process in place, but we will further detail that to NDOP and NM board to make sure that everybody has the same understanding about the process and how this will work. It will be exactly following the same procedure as in 2018, much more elaborated and much more comprehensive, because the number of ANSPs helping is quite significant. What I would...
Razvan, this is Gerd from Lufthansa. I have one question, because you wrote, and your slide says, has been agreed. I have the question, is has been agreed, is already in place, or is it has been agreed that they provide a benefit, but we are still in a process of balancing and measuring the equity or the impact? I'd like to know, okay, comes this on a slide, or?
Well, I will come immediately after on the next steps. But as I have said, the cost-benefit ratio of all the measures will be is in process of being prepared. The delay, I can tell you that we are talking up to 15 million minutes of delay saved. 15 million minutes of delays. Just to tell you that one of the ACCs that is the root cause for those reroutings, without those measures, will have 9.7 minutes per flight average delay. With 9.7 minutes per flight average delay, I think the traffic will be blocked, basically, and the suffering will be quite significant. The rerouting, a large number of the level cap scenarios that were put have not been accepted. They have not been retained in the discussions last week, because that was a long list, but they have not been retained. From the top of my head, I give you the example of a flow between London TMA and Switzerland that was proposed to be at very strange levels. I don't even dare to mention you the level, but that measure has been cancelled. That measure has been completely cancelled because the level was completely unacceptable for such a flow. So the benefit will be assessed for the globality of the measures. There are other measures actually that are leading, as I have said, especially on the Central Southeast Europe, that are leading to shorter and cheaper routes. So there the benefit will be actually positive in both in flight efficiency and capacity terms. I think from the globality of the measures that we are seeing, probably in terms of horizontal flight efficiency, we will be more or less at the level of last year. In terms of impact, We will have to check now because we've never done this from a vertical point of view, given the fact that a number of measures have not been retained, what else remains compared to last year. We had a very good feedback in the meeting over the several weeks and months. A very good feedback also from the airspace users that was presented and taken into consideration for each of the measures presented last week. And there were almost all the airspace users associations were attending the meeting last week, and they have been putting copy transparently on all the information that was used in the preparation of those measures. Now, the next steps. As from this week, we have started to look into the preparation of the RAD measures and how all those rerouting measures will be transformed into RAD restrictions. Some of them, as I've said, being measures, for instance, from Portugal up to the UK, or from Germany, Poland down to Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey. Of course, they will require a very good handling of how the RAD is being made to make sure that we have a correct distribution of the traffic flows. We are looking into having an additional sub-regional meeting. The information will go out tonight at the end of this forum. With states in Southeast and Central Europe to address the final measures in this part, and that will be mid-February. Also, by then, we will have the business case analysis for both capacity and flight efficiency for those measures. This was exactly your question. And we hope to have all the measures finalized for publication by 28th of February, in order to give sufficient time for everybody to have them in advance and to get prepared. The effective date of the measures will be 25th of April, and the end date of the measures will be 6th of November 2019. Between the start of February and mid-March, we could have further discussions. But for any further measure or for any adaptation, the implementation date must remain 25th of April 2019. By mid-May, we are planning, and we have already booked a date, to have the first review and an initial post-ops analysis of how the measures are working in practice, what else needs to be improved, and which are the if everything works basically as planned, if some measures are not required, if some measures don't work properly, etc. So that will happen by mid-May, to still have a little bit of time to do any possible improvements for the summer 2019. If you want to look into all the details of those, there is a stand in the back of the hall where John Well and Melike Atik and Robert Falk are manning this stand. Is just where you go out to smoke. All the measures are there. So they will be able to go with you through the measures to see a little bit if you are not already, if those measures have not been given to you personally, either as ANSPs or airspace users. There have been several dispatches of those measures to the entire community. But if you want to see what has been taken into consideration last week, what has been cancelled, what stays, what remains, the impacts, etc., you have my colleagues out there, and they will be able to show that to you. So this is about the measures themselves. It was a very long effort, very comprehensive effort to get there. To be honest, we compared it to an effort similar to redesigning the entire European airspace. This was the size of the effort and the size of the coordination required. I would have been glad to spend this time to redesign the airspace, actually. But we come to that point also because there are a couple of good news there. So, on the preparation of the Network Operations Plan 2019-2024, we are there on the short final also. We had approximately 30 bilateral meetings. In some cases, we had several meetings with the same ANSP, and the purpose was the discussion of those measures. So if I count everything that was done in total, not just for the preparation of the NOP, I think we would get to 3 times more bilateral meetings than is mentioned here for the preparation of all those measures. There will be transparent information available. The NOP will cover the full RP3 because there is this legal obligation to provide a full outlook for the entire RP3 period for the purpose of the performance scheme implementing rule requirements. It will be published by mid-February as a in the first edition, and it will include the impact and the delay outlook with and without the proposed measures. As a result of what we have seen in the Network Operations Plan, we believe that the measures that we are talking for 2019 will be reconducted in 2020. It is not easy to say what will happen in 2021 because probably the situation will start improving in 2021, but also because the airspace changes that will come between 2020 and 2021 will need to be taken into consideration. But I don't want to, to hide anything. It will be actually strongly required that the measures implemented for 2019, especially the rerouting measures, I'm not talking about the more general measures. They will, once implemented, of course, they will stay and they will give benefits. But these RAD measures will be required also for 2020. And there is a last point on this slide that strategic decisions will be required for the longer term. Because I can tell you those measures will be required also, or similar measures will be required also for 2022, 2023, 2024. But do we really want this type of measures or do we want something else? But this is another type of discussion because now we focus on summer 2019. So this is the current situation with the Network Operations Plan, and of course for the period 2022-2024 we will publish the outlook without any measure, basically because there are no measures to be simulated there. So for everybody who is asking in all directions which is the delay impact, which is the flight efficiency impact, environmental impact, all this will be provided. So there is no need of all those measures. There is no need to look into other directions. Harmonization of flexible use of airspace application and enhanced FOA procedures. Together with states, ANSPs, civil military partners, mainly in the FABEC area, we are looking into some very dedicated measures, but we are looking at much more network-orientated measures also. So, at network level, we are looking into an increased usage of the update airspace use plan to improve predictability and by allowing reroutings and refiling. Alignment of some military bookings for the peak times identified for the civil traffic during the summer 2019 period, so that if there is a need to have an access for a full flow, we get a coordinated military activity for that full flow and a synchronized military activity so that the flow does not interrupt in some parts of the airspace. We are looking to improving the accuracy of the airspace use plan to improve predictability, alignment between the FOA restrictions between the Appendix 7 of the RAD and the CAC-D to allow a better flight planning, a more efficient utilization of TATFCM scenarios to take into account advanced flexible airspace and strengthen the effectiveness of the strategic reroutings. Currently, internal proposals are being developed, and those of you who have the privilege to be members of the airspace management subgroup, you might have received already some of those proposals for discussions for the SMSG next week, because those will be network measures that will be included in the updates of the ASM ASM handbook. Those of you who are sufficiently old to remember the DMIN program you would see that actually some of those things have been developed at the times of the DMIN program. A lot of us forgot about them, and now we saw, oh, they are very useful, but of course they have to be undusted and modernized to the level of technology and operational concepts that we have today. So you will not see, rocket science there. You will see very practical means of improving the effectiveness of the utilization of the military airspace to support capacity. So this is at a more general network level. At a more local level, we are working very closely with the FABEC Steering Committee Ops and with the FABEC Airspace Committee, but also with Maastricht and with Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, to look into some practical aspects related, again, to the alignment of some military bookings for peak times. Maastricht was looking into the extension of trials that took place in 2018 for some of the military airspace in their area. And we are also looking into organizing with the civil and military colleagues a post-ops analysis of what has happened in military terms in the FABEC area in 2018 and which further practical improvements can be put in place. This is the subject of a very detailed proposal that will be discussed in about 2 weeks' time, again with FABEC, and there is an exchange of letters between us and the steering committee ops also on this topic. So we are trying to ease as much as possible the utilization of the military airspace in order to get some additional benefits. Now, on the structural airspace bottlenecks, this is another action. 3 areas have been included in the NM action plan. First of all, the interface between France and Spain. There were a number of meetings in November, January. There will be other meetings that will continue in February, including a high-level meeting next Thursday between DSNA and the NAIRE. I'm very happy to see that there were good improvements agreed for implementation for summer 2019. Some of them have been already implemented in 2018, mainly at the interface between Madrid, Barcelona, and Bordeaux. These were quite long discussions, I would say, but we have managed altogether now to come to a very good conclusion, and I'm very grateful to both NIRE and the SNA for the good understanding that they've shown on the need to address that interface and to provide additional flexibility and capacity at this interface. And that was a very good way forward agreed. Further discussions on additional improvements beyond summer 2019 will continue during the meetings next week and in the future to start addressing also the interface between Barcelona and Marseille in the longer term, but also the longer term projects that are required at the interface between France and Spain to address, for instance, the cross-border implementation of reroute airspace, to address some emerging military requirements in the area, etc. So there is already a very good progress there, and I must say it was admirable to see how well the discussions took place last week between NIRE and DSNA when we were discussing about the balancing of flows between DSNA and NIRE during the summer 2019. It was a very good outcome and a very good understanding after all those discussions that we have together of each other's problems, and I think that was a very good thing to happen. Then we are looking also into the FABEC area for the FABEC airspace. We had the first meeting on the 22nd of January, and it was a good meeting. The objectives, the criteria, the assumptions have been agreed, the steps and the deliverables. You see here that we will look into a full cross-border airspace design with the definition of optimum sectorization in that area. As a result of the proposals being made last week, we will also identify the operational resources needed to deliver the required performance in the area, how many sectors, which types of opening schemes, etc., will be required. How would this translate in the number of controllers in order to have a complete picture of that? The criteria and assumptions used high traffic forecast, the performance, the FABEC and the complete European airspace as a single airspace, looking at both lower and upper airspace requirements, very importantly, including all the future military requirements and any other national requirements. We will follow strictly the methodology that we have in the technical specifications for airspace design, and we will define also at the end of the project which would be the projects to be extracted for implementation in order to converge eventually to this target plan. The plan is that during this spring we will get all the military requirements and any additional airspace requirements from our colleagues in FABEC, and we will have an initial evaluation of a possible airspace structure considering cross-border free route airspace. We will start from the baseline of the projects that we have currently under development in the pipeline together with the FABEC with the FABEC ANSPs, and we will have also how the deliverable will be seen. We are planning a second meeting of this group by mid-June, when we will collect all the requirements and we will put that in the pipeline. By end of August, we will have a feedback on the discussion, and we will, at this meeting, and the initial proposal for the airspace, and then we will have an initial evaluation of the possible airspace resectorization. You see here the plan. I will not go through all of it. The idea is that by April 2020, to have a final draft of the deliverable of the airspace structure and an agreed final proposal for the implementation plan that will be proposed then through the network CDM process for approval. We will follow a similar process with the FABEC instances through the steering committee ops and the airspace committee. Out of that, detailed projects will be derived and worked towards implementation. Hopefully in this process we'll find some initial improvements also for the summer 2020. Finally, I'm not going to insist on those. You have seen this morning in the presentations again from Monique and Gianni, that was a lot of internal brainstorming. What can be done better next summer on ATFM, on weather, whatever. This resulted in a large number of proposals that I think Monique, you presented them this morning. And then, of course, they will need to be transformed in procedures that will be put through the NMCDM process as from next month, with the purpose to have them fully agreed by April. And of course, further details on weather, on how to attack volatility and these kind of things will be covered tomorrow by Chris and by Gianni. I don't want to go into that level of detail now. Which are the benefits? First of all, we are building on a standard set in 2018. We have extensively applied the lessons learned for 2018, and what became clear is that network solutions are possible if we have a transparent cooperation altogether. The network benefit eventually became the priority. As I have mentioned, we will avoid the cumbersome coordination on a daily basis. There is an optimum network balance solution overall between capacity and flight efficiency. Again, the benefits will be available, the full assessment will be available by mid-February. At this point in time, we can talk of up to 15 million minutes of delay being saved as a result of those measures, avoiding cancellation of flights and increasing predictability. Now that we have almost all the measures approved, we can model the complete effect of those in terms of flight efficiency, and we are going to redo the delay effects of those.